Hello, welcome back to the On Deck Circle podcast. I am your esteemed, handsome host, Nick Zanabone. You can find me at nzanabone93 on Twitter. And most of all, not only am I back co-hosting the On Deck Circle podcast, but baseball is back. Jason, I need you in here. We need to celebrate. My man, I was getting worried that we were going to have to listen to Dave talk about these deep-ass prospects for the next 10 weeks. But no. We are here. We are ready.
Camps are open.
My Fantasy Six-Pack Series draft is still going.
Same.
We're almost done. It's my final draft. I got auto-picked the other day, and that was annoying. And then Josiah Gray or something, which is fine.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
But I was just like, oh man. So I had to set my queue up more.
I think between TGFBI and now the Fantasy Six-Pack Series, I'm in both the slowest drafts of both of those because I'm still only in round 21, I think, of the Fantasy Six-Pack Series draft. So I don't know.
Certainly something. I need to show you my shirt today. It is the one and only Razor Ramon.
Oh, R.I.P.
Shout out for the R.I.P. to the bad guy. One of my all-time favorites. Great wrestler. Good man for the most part. Substance abuse, but that's fine. Let's get Dave on in here. Give me your best Razor Ramon impression.
Bro, I don't know. I know who he is, but I couldn't tell you a thing about him.
Bad guy.
I don't have a toothpick. Isn't that his thing? Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Good.
I do want to brag real quick because I haven't been able to do this in years. Literally every year in TGFBI, I am in the very last league to draft. I know you guys know this, and it's not been my fault because I'm always, one of the faster guys to draft. We finished our TGFBI, Jason, last Thursday, I think it was. We cruised. It was awesome. There was, a few pauses here and there, but for the most part, we cruised. Fantasy Six-Pack Series, we finished that up today. Would have been a little faster, but in the last few rounds, I was a slow guy because I thought the draft was done. And I was up last night, and somebody had to DM me and tell me I was up. So I was like, oh, shit, I'm sorry. I thought we were done. So I picked real quick. And then again this afternoon, AJ texts me, and he's like, yo, you got 3 minutes to pick. And I'm like, I thought we were done. So
sounds like 30 Rock.
Yeah. So, oh my God. So I picked again, but that finished up today. And then the relegation league, same thing. I don't know how far along some guys are in that, but we finished that up over the weekend. So I have been blessed to go from having the absolute slowest drafts to having really awesome quick drafts. So that was fun. But I think it's time we bring in our guest here. This is our next to last guest now that baseball is coming back, like Nick said. So next week we're bringing on a non-baseball guy. So this will be our last actual baseball guy. Up next week will be a friend of mine, a local guy. His name is Eric Zane. It's gonna be very light, a very fun episode. He's gonna bring a lot of good laughs, but. We're talking baseball this week, so we brought in, like I said, a heavy hitter here. I got here Mr. James Anderson, lead prospect analyst and assistant baseball editor over at RotoWire. So welcome, James.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you don't sound like a robot. So we're off to a great start now.
Super pumped to have you on.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite.
Of course, man. Anything you want to plug or anything you want to talk about before we get rocking?
Head over to RotoWire and give our site a try if you're not already a subscriber. But I think we can just rock and roll.
All right. Well, hey, let's get into it. So what we're going to do here this week is we're going to talk about some of the free agency signings, some trades, and then kind of whatever else we get brought up. Obviously, can't cover everything. Hasn't been quite the flurry of moves that I thought we would see, but there's definitely been some good stuff. And the first two kind of combine into one. And that's basically the trade between, the Yankees and the Twins. And the first thing I want to talk about here is Josh Donaldson. So So in this trade, we've got Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela going to Minnesota, Josh Donaldson basically, and Isaiah Falefa heading the other way. So James, I'm kind of curious your thoughts here on what you think about Donaldson heading over to the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, I think Donaldson's trade value fantasy value is not affected a ton here. I think there's a lot of really sort of interesting small moving pieces involved here. Guys who you might give a slight bump to in value on the Twins. Certainly a defensive upgrade for the Yankees pitching staff, getting Falefa in there at shortstop and getting rid of Gary Sanchez at catcher. But with Donaldson, I think you're going to get big time production from him whenever he's on the field, regardless of what team he's on. It's just a matter of how many games he's out there.
So what do you think, Nick? Obviously, you're a Red Sox fan here. This is a Yankees trade. So, I mean, I'm curious your thoughts.
I will never be able to say IKF's name, so he will forever just be IKF on this podcast if it comes
That's fair enough.
But I don't know. I understand Sanchez is very bad at defense, but when he hits the ball, he does hit it far. But Josh Donaldson does the same thing. I don't think it changes much other than the defense, because the offsetting of Donaldson not playing would be Gary Sanchez not hitting the ball. So I don't think it really changes the Yankees offense in general. I loved how I did see a tweet maybe 12 hours before this trade happened, and it was Aaron Boone saying that Urshela is their starting shortstop. And then just minutes later, just gone.
Well, as long as it wasn't for Nightingale, I mean, yeah. that would have been a death sentence. But yeah, I mean, I basically echo, what James said. I think that, it doesn't change a whole lot of value for Donaldson. He obviously doesn't go into a worse situation. He goes into probably a better situation. And so as long as he's on the field, I mean, I think he's going to produce. I'm not sure there's so much to take away from it as far as, a fantasy perspective, from what we're talking about it from. On a little lesser note, I'm curious what you guys think about, the Sanchez going to the Twins. I mean, it was just 2 years ago that Gary Sanchez was at the top of my, catcher rankings for Dynasty. And I'd have to even look now to tell you where he's at, but obviously he's dropped tremendously. Any chance that, he gets out of the big lights in New York, gets a little change of scenery, and we see a little bit of a rebound, or do we just think he's done? What do you think there, James?
He's been a 200 hitter since 2018. So, the power is great. Obviously, he had a bit of a resurgence in 2019. A lot of hitters had career years that year. His career year was in 2017. But, I mean, in 2018, 2020, 2021, if he was on your fantasy team, you were punting batting average. So I'm really just a hard out on Sanchez, regardless of what team he's on. I would rather have Ryan Jeffers as my catcher too than Gary Sanchez, because I think Jeffers has some unrealized potential and is a potential ascending player, whereas I really think Sanchez was just, getting off of him was doing the Yankees a favor. The Twins obviously wanted to get off of Josh Donaldson's contract, and so it's kind of my trash for your trash in that sense. But I really think you can't overstate in a roto league. Sanchez is just doing a ton of damage to your batting average. There might be other formats you play in, points, where maybe strikeouts don't hurt you or something like that, where Sanchez can still be of some value. But it's been a pretty long track record now, 4-year track record of him just being a huge drain on your batting average.
So what about like a TGFBI league where, you have two catchers? Would you consider him as your second catcher, or is he just even off the books, just off your draft board for that as well?
Yeah, he's off my board there. I would just rather take Omar Narvaez type or a Yadi Molina type, where I'm not getting that same level of power production, but at least I'm not sinking my batting average. And I think when you see a player as flawed as Gary Sanchez, like when those guys get traded from their original team, think about a guy like Nomar Mazara, for instance. Like once that guy gets traded from the team that spent all that effort and resources in developing that player, there's no loyalty there anymore. They're not like the Twins don't feel beholden to giving Sanchez a ton of playing time if he's not earning it. So I think he's a big name. I think this trade for the Twins was more about freeing up playing time for guys like Jose Miranda, getting off of Josh Donaldson's contract, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
James just crushed my TGFBI catcher 2 strategy of Gary Sanchez.
Well, it was a bad strategy to begin with, Jason.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, we got a big trade here that happened, and a big contract that was just signed. But Matt Olson gets traded over to the Braves. Obviously, that officially signals the end of Freddie Freeman there, even though it was kind of looking that way, anyways. But the trade package was interesting. I'll be curious what James thinks, because we're talking basically prospects here. But Braves send Christian Pache, Shea Langeliers, Ryan Cusick, and Joey Estes for Matt Olson. So obviously we'll talk a little bit about the Matt Olson part of it, but curious what James thinks from a fantasy perspective about those guys and potential impact of them moving over systems.
Yeah, I think this is a trade that really highlights how big fantasy has become in terms of the prospect evaluation industry, because I would say maybe 80%, if not more, of the people who look at prospects and read about prospects are doing it for dynasty league purposes. They're not doing it just for like real life, is this guy going to help my favorite team win purposes. And if you're looking at this trade package from a fantasy angle, a dynasty league angle, this is a very underwhelming package of prospects, because you're getting an outfielder who is an elite defender who might not be able to hit. You're getting a catcher who's a really good defensive catcher who has some power, who probably won't hit better than like 250. You've got a really solid arm in Ryan Cusick, who could move fairly quickly to the majors if he were moved to a relief role. He's got 2 monster pitches, K rate over 50% last year. But there's a lot of questions about whether or not he can start. And then you got Joey Estes, who I think is a pretty underrated starting pitching prospect, who's probably 3 years away from the majors. And that's not a very interesting guy to have in Dynasty. So the real life value of this prospect haul far outweighs the dynasty value of these guys. So I think it in many ways, it kind of reminds me of the package the Diamondbacks got back from St. Louis for Paul Goldschmidt a few years ago, where, Carson Kelly, not an exciting fantasy prospect at all, but from a real life standpoint, getting that guy for 6 years is quite valuable. So I find it hard to believe that the A's passed on a better real life package for Olson here. But I don't think any of those prospects are all that exciting for Dynasty.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a shame, because there was obviously some steam behind Pache at one point in time. And I think obviously that's long since gone. But why don't you talk to me a little bit about your thoughts with Matt Olson there, Jason? Obviously going from the A's over to the Braves, significantly better lineup. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately this was just a way for them to maybe get a discounted Freddie Freeman. I mean, it's kind of similar, I guess, as far as the outlook goes for Olson and Freeman, just maybe a little bit cheaper on that end. And like you said, a better lineup. Going to have probably hit near the top of that lineup as well. So the RBI and run totals are going to be there. The power is going to be there. I think it's a great move for the Braves. I mean, and like just talk about the package they gave back. It wasn't a great package they gave back. So I mean, it's mostly almost like a robbery, I guess, they pulled over on the Oakland. But yeah, I like it.
All right, let's get into the next one. This one here kind of surprised me. Obviously, with the universal DH coming in play, Nelson Cruz's suitors doubled. So doesn't surprise me to see him sign in the NL, but I did not expect him to sign with the Washington Nationals. That didn't really make a lot of sense, especially with some of the teams that were rumored to be interested in him, and the Nationals weren't one of them. Nick, I want to get your opinion on this first, but before I do, I've got a comment that came in, and it kind of harks back to last week, because last week we had Corbin Young on, so of course we were going late. We went to a 10 o'clock start time. So being adults, Jason and I were able to stay up and still contribute to the live stream, but Nick was past his bedtime. So we got a comment here that says, hey, look, Popsicle Boy is up past his bedtime. So someone's giving you a shout out, Nick.
Yeah.
Even the popsicle is a throwback to one of our
Yeah.
episodes, which I was gift, and it was this. It was, who even is that?
I don't know, but they're a follower.
It's a friend of mine. I may have enticed them to make said comment.
Oh, you just ruined that.
Well, I'm not gonna lie to the guy,
It's
but
fine.
yeah,
Hey,
the popsicle gift.
I'm
man.
sorry. I wake up at 5 a.m. That's what I do. And I'm not staying up past 10 unless it's for the Bachelor season finale tonight.
Oh, is it? Oh
man.
boy. Oh man. Well,
Oh,
we don't want to keep you too long, then. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Nelson Cruz? What you think about him signing the 1-year deal with the Nats?
I think that I'm very excited just for his impact on Juan Soto. And that's going to do more for the Nationals than he's going to do on the field for them. He's going to do fine. He'll hit 35 home runs. He'll be great in Dynasty for you. He's batting around some great hitters. Well, the great hitter. And I just think that I don't know why he went there. Maybe he wanted to play with Soto. I haven't really read into it, but he's someone that's going to hit you 35 home runs if he's healthy all year and be happy doing it.
So, James, this is the exact opposite of your specialty in prospects. This is, the oldest man in baseball. So the anti guy here for James. But James, what are your thoughts with the Cruz signing in Washington?
I think it's awesome if you drafted Nelson Cruz anywhere, and if you drafted Soto or Josh Bell. I mean, I think all three of those guys, I think, get a bump here because Cruz gets a really juicy spot in that lineup. Improves the amount of runs that Soto will be able to score. Improves the amount of RBI that Josh Bell will get. I think if you look at his market, a lot of the really good teams that you would think would be interested in a guy his age just have enough talent on their roster where they don't want to just clog up that DH spot with a guy who needs to play every day. And the Nationals had a extremely top-heavy roster, so they knew that they could offer him everyday playing time. And then you look at what the Twins were able to get from the Rays last year for 2 months of Nelson Cruz. They got Joe Ryan and Drew Strotman. And so the Nationals probably figure if Nelson Cruz kind of bounces back to the hitter he was with the Twins rather than the hitter he was with the Rays, which I think is a fairly solid bet, then they can probably flip him for at least some sort of prospect at the trade deadline. Yeah. So I think it's kind of everyone helping everyone on this one.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to throw to you, Jason, was, do you think that this is going to end up just becoming a rental where they flip him at the deadline? And that's what James had brought up. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I don't really foresee, the Nats particularly competing in that division. So barring some crazy, free agent signing still left to come or a trade that's left to come, I don't foresee them being any sort, maybe not even like a wild card. So I definitely think this is, obviously right now the optimism is high. So let's say, hey, let's bring him in. And, fallback option is that's definitely someone's going to be adding a Nelson Cruz at the deadline for sure. Like, especially with the National League DH. I mean, you now got, 29 other teams that were foreseeably going to be in on a Nelson Cruz at the deadline.
Yeah, and then the last thing I want to cover, I didn't expect to cover any injuries at this point. I thought it was going to be a free agency, frenzy and, trades and stuff, but I don't know how we don't talk about, Fernando Tatis Jr. He suffered a fractured wrist. I think they said like in December or something. when he wasn't able to, communicate with team doctors and such. So they're basically expecting, he's going to be out about 3 months. So, return somewhere in the middle of June. So I know that in of itself is not that big of a deal, but James, what do you think as far as his dynasty value? I mean, do you think that you can, clip it just ever so slightly, because it seems like it's just persistent injury after injury after injury. And obviously he's got, absolute elite top end, talent without question. But at what point do you start to chip him down a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you can't knock him too far just because of how young he is and how good he is. But if there were a question about him versus Soto or him versus Acuna or him versus Vlad, I think I've got him pretty clearly behind those three guys. The injuries, like you said, they're adding up, but also just pretty poor judgment on his part to I don't know what type of motorcycle riding he was doing, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it'd be that difficult to just be a pro athlete and not be in motorcycle accidents. And he's proven that is a difficult thing for him to get around. So
he's got hundreds of billions of reasons not to do it.
I think it's in the contract now.
I mean, I just think it's more about just kind of, being a professional, make sure you're there for your teammates, that type of thing. So
what are your thoughts there, Nick? I mean, obviously for anyone who drafted, I mean, a lot of us have completed, or, if not completed, we're at the very end of a lot of these, redraft leagues. So obviously if you took Tatis, you took, it's said and done. So that's obviously a huge kick, and great for me because I end up getting Trey Turner and TGFPI at the third spot. And I very easily could have been stuck with Tatis. It wouldn't have been terrible at the time, but could have been terrible. So, I mean, what are you thinking, what are you thinking just for him going forward from your point of view?
I'm checking in on the owner for him just because they might be like, fuck this. I'm tired of it. But he's undeniably one of the best players in baseball. He could have slid into second base and broke his wrist. And and we wouldn't be saying this just because he's riding the motorcycle. We're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do it. But
I would say the exact same thing, regardless of the injury, of how it happened, just because it just keeps popping up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
he's too good. He's still top. I would draft him now in the top 10 in a redraft, knowing he'd miss 3 months.
That might be why you suck at redraft.
Knowing he'd miss how much time?
Isn't it 3 months?
Yeah, he's mid June.
Did you take him top 10?
With a wrist injury, so
I would. I didn't say I'd be smart to do it. I just said I would.
As long as you don't, as long as you're not admitting to being smart, I guess I'll let that pass. So Jason, I want to talk to you about something that just becomes a byproduct of the Tatis injury, and I already was kind of cheating a little bit late in drafts by thinking that we may see, I wouldn't call it a breakout, but that we might see a better than expected season out of Kim from the Padres. Mm-hmm. This obviously opens up playing time for him. I can't imagine he's not the everyday shortstop, to at least to start the season. But I mean, what's your thought process from, even just a redraft perspective, but maybe even from just a dynasty perspective, that Kim should legitimately get a chance now and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what Nick was saying about the redrafting, it kind of sucks that we all just, without the lockout, this is some news we would have known about, back when it happened, and we wouldn't be taking him, top 3. Some people were taking him 1-1 in TGFBI, so that just kind of sucks looking back on the whole lockout situation. But yeah, I mean, it definitely opens up some, playing time for some others inside that infield. Obviously, Kim, we saw him a little bit last year. San Diego went out and spent all that money on bringing in all those different guys and still brought in Kim. We did get some mixed results out of Kim last year, so I don't know how much I'd be, putting, how far up I'd move him on my board in redraft, just knowing that the playing time is there. I'd like to see a little bit out of him first before I'm, making that leap of faith and thinking that, because, again, it's redraft. So, talking about 3 months, you're still going to get Tatis back at some point. So unless Kim can come out, scorching hot in the first, couple months of the season, I don't foresee him, making some sort of big splash at all.
So what about you, James? What are your thoughts on Kim as far as this year in redraft and even just, in dynasty, going forward?
I'm just not a fan really at all. I think that they invested enough, and their lack of depth is a big enough of an issue where I think he will certainly get a chance to win a job. I just I think he was overrated when he came over. Nothing really happened last year to change that evaluation, and I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in at least some sort of escape valve there, because I can't picture them going into the year with no alternative but to play him every day.
At what point do you think this season, if even this season, that CJ Abrams is even a consideration? Like, I don't see an opening day. I don't care what he does in spring training, but do you think that there's even a chance, or obviously there's a chance, but what kind of chances do you think we see CJ Abrams this year, and roughly a time frame?
I think there's the only reason I could see him getting pushed to the majors is because AJ Preller is kind of on thin ice, and maybe there's a bit of a moral hazard there where he needs to kind of get results, and he'd rather bring up one of his top draft picks of his tenure and see how he does and kind of go down with the ship that way. I just don't like, from a developmental standpoint, I think Abrams absolutely should spend the entire season in the upper levels of the minors. Maybe there's like a 5% chance he's just so good that he absolutely needs to be up, but I definitely think they would be rushing him if they pushed him up this year. We're all very excited about Abrams for dynasty because of the speed, because of the batting average potential, but he's got a long way to go in terms of being an impactful hitter. Like his exit velocity numbers are just nowhere near the other top prospects that he's ranked around. So I think you'd be kind of messing with his development a little bit to bring him up this year, unless he's just way further ahead of schedule than I know.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy that's got like little over 300 plate appearances so far. So still, I think, rushing it would be for sure.
Yeah, it just makes it interesting with, Tatis being out now. And it doesn't seem likely that would happen regardless, like I said, of what happens in spring training. But you know that there's going to be people out there who, if he gives them any sort of reason to have wishful thinking, that they're going to be disappointed if he doesn't play. But like I said, I don't see a scenario where that happens. So that's why I was curious what James thought. Maybe James had disagreed. I didn't think so, but you never know. All right, James. Well, that's going to do it for us this week, man. Like I said, I a little disappointed in the lack of frenzy that we had, but we've had some interesting stuff. Obviously, we didn't cover every single thing. We'll get into some more next week with Eric Zane when he joins us. But James, I do appreciate you having on, coming here and chatting with us a little bit. Give you the floor one last time here before we take off. If there's anything that you want to tell people about, or anything you need to plug.
Follow me on Twitter at RealJRAnderson. I tweet out all my podcasts and articles from there. Top 400 dynasty prospects. Update those year round. Going to be giving those another update before the start of the season. And rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial. You don't need to give us a credit card. Just check out the site, use it, and you're good. Appreciate you guys having me on. Wouldn't recommend taking C.J. Abrams in the first round, or taking Fernando Tatis Jr. in the first round anymore. But
or C.J. Abrams for that matter. You're not
Yeah.
wrong.
yeah.
Noah Nick, he might take him in the second round.
Yeah. Yeah, at least wait till the second or third round. But, yeah, appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks,
Yeah, for
Jim.
sure.
course.
So, yeah, anyone who's watching us that is not following, James and his content, obviously you're doing something wrong. So make sure that you do that. Again, James, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week for a very similar episode with Mr. Eric Zane joining us. So we'll see everybody same time next week.
See you, boys.
See ya.